Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, this time we have a bit of a unique deep dive, I guess you could say.
Yeah, a little different.
Because, well, first off, it's brought to you by Pankaj Shrestha's production.
Right.
And we're both, part of his team, and it's been really great working with him.
Absolutely.
Pankaj, just really briefly, he's a guy with a ton of experience helping people in organizations.
Yeah, he's got like 30 years under his belt, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just, helping people find that clarity and drive innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're kind of hoping to find a little clarity ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal.
Looking at some of the material that you share with us.
Yeah, this is an interesting pairing you gave us.
Yeah.
Some insights into Pankaj himself,
Right.
alongside this really cool rendering of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations by Sam Tarod.
Right.
So the mission, as always, is to kind of pull out the core wisdom of these sources and present them to you without you having to kind of wade through all the details and everything.
Yeah, get to those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully help you connect with these ideas in a way that maybe you haven't before.
Right. Okay, so let's start with the meditations.
Okay.
Now, you say, philosophy to people, and they think maybe big dusty textbooks.
Yeah.
But this is something a little bit different, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Meditations is not really a formal philosophical treatise or anything like that.
Right.
It's actually a collection of personal journal entries by Marcus Aurelius, who, as you might know, was a Roman emperor.
Yeah.
And these were just his own private reflections, really, kind of like self-reminders on how to live a good life according to Stoic principles.
Right. And this version that we're looking at is by Sam Tarod.
Right.
And he didn't just sort of, dust off an old translation.
No, he did not.
He did something a bit more with it.
Yeah, it's based on a 19th century translation by George Long. But Tarod really streamlined it for a modern reader.
Right.
So he's focused on what he sees as like the most essential concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gotten rid of some of the repetition that
Yeah.
you naturally find in a personal journal.
Sure.
And his goal was really to make Aurelius's wisdom more accessible.
Yeah, make it really hit home.
Yeah, have more of an impact for a modern audience.
Right. And the way that Tarodi himself came to Stoicism is kind of interesting, because it wasn't this, abstract intellectual thing for him.
Right. He didn't just stumble upon it in a library somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
He actually discovered it during a really difficult time in his life.
Right.
During the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
He talks about how he was going through some pretty major personal challenges.
Right.
Financial difficulties, divorce.
Wow.
And, and he turned to philosophy as a way to try to find some stability amidst all this chaos that was going on.
And that's where he found Epictetus and Aurelius. It's pretty amazing that, these ancient ideas can still be so relevant.
It is really remarkable.
The 21st century.
Yeah. I mean, for Tarod, he really found solace in these writings.
All right.
And this practical framework for dealing with life's challenges. So he embraces that really core Stoic idea that we should focus on what we can control.
Okay.
Which is basically our thoughts and our actions.
Mm-hmm.
And learn to just accept the things that we can't control.
Yeah.
Which is, like external events and other people's opinions and things like that.
Right.
And it's not about just sort of giving up.
Right.
It's about being smart and directing your energy where it can actually make a difference.
Right. And I think it's really important to make this distinction that Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless.
Right. It's a very common misconception.
Yeah.
People think that you're supposed to just shut off your emotions.
Right.
But that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
As Tarod understands it and as Aurelius practiced it, it's more about understanding those emotional responses that we have.
Okay.
And managing our judgments about them.
Right.
It's about becoming resilient.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're not just constantly being swept away by every feeling you have.
Okay, and this leads to, I think, a really, really powerful central idea that Tarod brings out. Yeah. Which is that your experience of life is determined by how you look at it.
Right. That's the key. That's the essence of Stoicism.
Yeah.
The idea is that events themselves are neutral.
Right.
But it's our interpretation,
our perspective,
our opinion, our judgment that determines our response.
Right.
And since our opinions are under our control, we actually have the power to shift our experience.
It's powerful stuff.
It is. And, as Aurelius put it, by changing your viewpoint, you change everything.
Right. Okay. So let's get into some of the key themes that Tarot highlights.
Okay.
Book 1, it seems to focus a lot on gratitude.
Yeah.
And learning from the people around him.
Right. He's really setting a foundation for his own life by looking at the virtues of others.
Right. It's like he's building this mental toolkit,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, he's picking and choosing the qualities that he wants to emulate.
Right.
And what's really interesting is how specific he gets.
Yeah. Yeah, and he talks about how, his grandfather
Right.
instilled in him good morals and an even temper.
Yeah, and his mother taught him about reverence and service to others and the importance of simple living.
Right. These are like bedrock principles,
Absolutely.
And then he goes on to talk about his teachers.
Yeah, and those are even more detailed.
Yeah, he talks about Rusticus.
Right.
And how he learned about discipline from him.
Yeah.
And avoiding that kind of intellectual one-upmanship.
Right, just trying to show off how smart you are.
Yeah, exactly. And communicating clearly and simply.
Right, being straightforward.
Yeah, and reacting calmly when you've been wronged.
Yeah.
And he even introduced Aurelius to Epictetus.
Right, that's a big one.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the power of mentorship right there.
It really is, yeah.
And then there's Antoninus Pius,
right.
His adoptive father, who's just this incredible role model.
Yeah, he sings his praises quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, the list of virtues is pretty remarkable.
It is, mildness and resolve and seeing himself as one of the people, impartial justice, wisdom from experience.
Wow, it's quite a list.
It is, and he was clearly impressed by Antoninus's ability to balance his public responsibilities with his personal life.
Right.
Staying grounded, being frugal, having a consistent routine, being willing to seek out expert advice. Mm-hmm. It paints a picture of a leader who is both wise and very practical.
Right, and it underscores the impact that role models can have.
Right.
If we can consciously observe the qualities that we admire in others, it gives us a guide for our own growth.
It does. It's not just about admiration.
Right.
It's about using those observations to improve yourself.
Right. And then we move on to book 2.
Okay.
And the focus shifts inward to the power of our own thoughts and opinions.
Right, our inner world.
Yeah. And this seems incredibly relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
In this world that just seems to be moving faster and faster, and there's just so much coming at us all the time.
Right, information overload.
Yeah.
Everything's vying for our attention.
Yeah, and Aurelius really emphasizes this importance of setting the tone for your day.
Right.
Right? He suggests starting the day with this reminder that you're probably going to run into difficult people.
Yeah.
People who are, intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful.
Right, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But by acknowledging that beforehand.
Yeah.
And understanding that it often comes from a lack of understanding of what's truly important.
Right.
We can cultivate this sense of tolerance.
Exactly. It's about being prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
Managing your expectations.
Yeah.
And this really crucial insight that no one can truly harm us without our consent.
Right. This is huge.
Yeah.
Events happen. Mm-hmm. But it's our judgments about those events that cause us suffering.
Right.
So this understanding gives us a sense of agency.
Yeah, it's empowering.
It is, yeah.
And then there's this recurring theme of the fleeting nature of life.
Right.
He reminds himself constantly that, we're just
flesh and bone.
Yeah, a little flesh and breath and the ruling mind.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image.
It is, yeah. And it really underscores that we need to be living according to our principles right now in this moment.
Right.
Not getting caught up in external pressures or worrying about the future.
Right.
The present is all we have.
Right. And this goes back to that fundamental Stoic distinction.
Yes.
Between what we can control and what we can't.
Absolutely.
Our thoughts, our judgments, our intentions, our actions.
Yeah, those are all within our sphere of influence.
Right.
But external events, other people's opinions, the outcomes of our actions, those are largely outside of our control.
Yeah. So focusing on what we can influence.
That's the key.
That's the key to inner peace.
To be effective.
Yeah. Okay. And later on in the meditations, Aurelius really digs into this idea of living in accordance with nature.
Okay.
and reason.
Right. So what does that mean?
Yeah, what are the core ideas there?
Well, I think one of the central concepts is this idea of the interconnectedness of everything in the universe.
Yeah.
Aurelius believed in this natural order, this kind of cosmic web,
Okay.
and he encourages us to accept whatever happens as being part of this larger design.
Right.
He even uses everyday examples like, a baker's loaf cracking as it bakes,
Right.
or a ripe fig falling from a tree,
Yeah.
to show that these events that we might see as imperfect or negative are actually just part of this natural process.
Right.
Even beautiful in a way.
Right. It's about perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding harmony with the universe.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, directing our mental energy
Right.
towards useful thoughts and actions.
Right.
Instead of getting consumed by things that are outside of our control.
Yes. Stop wasting time and energy on things you can't change.
Right, other people's business or fleeting trends or whatever.
Exactly.
And this idea of the divine spark within us,
Right.
our capacity for reason is really important here.
It is, Aurelius saw our reason as a connection to this universal intelligence, this guiding principle of nature.
Right.
And he believed that nurturing and following our inner reason is essential for living a good life.
Okay.
So, things like justice and truth and courage, self-control, he saw those as being in alignment with our rational nature.
Okay.
So those are the highest goods.
Okay. But he also seems pretty dismissive of the pursuit of fame.
Yes, he is.
And external validation.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, because he recognized that external approval is temporary and ultimately meaningless.
Right.
Fame fades, opinions change. So he really encourages us to focus on intrinsic values.
Okay.
Living a virtuous life for its own sake. It's
Right.
not for external rewards.
Right.
As he says, life is for the living,
Right.
meaning the present moment,
Right.
and acting in accordance with your principles.
Right. And there's this recurring thing he does where he defines things.
Yeah.
He's trying to get at the true essence of things.
Right.
What's the value in that?
Well, I think by understanding the true nature of things, by stripping away all the emotional baggage and superficial judgments,
Right.
we can respond to them more effectively and with greater clarity.
Okay.
It helps us manage our expectations
Right.
and our responses.
Right.
And he also talks about the continuous flow of life and the acceptance of death as a natural part of that.
Right.
Death is not an ending.
Right.
It's just a transformation.
Okay. And it seems like throughout the meditations, he's really advocating for finding peace.
Yes.
By retreating into our inner world.
Yeah, that's his safe space.
Yeah, and focusing on those core principles.
Exactly. Turning inward, away from distractions to reconnect with our reason and our values.
Right, and that provides strength and clarity.
It does.
And then he talks about, this common reason that all humans share.
Right.
Which, makes us all interconnected.
Makes us citizens of the world.
Yeah, and he encourages us to focus on activities that benefit both ourselves and the wider community.
Absolutely.
Right. The meditations also offer a lot of wisdom on how to deal with other people.
Yeah, interacting with the outside world.
Right.
Right.
What are some of the key insights there?
Well, I think one of the most important is remembering that we all share this human nature. We all have this capacity for reason, even those who are behaving badly.
Right.
So Aurelius urges us to respond to wrongdoing with understanding and even pity.
Okay.
Because those actions often stem from a lack of wisdom or understanding.
Right. It's about, seeing the world through their eyes.
Yeah. Trying to understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Not to excuse the behavior, but to help you manage your own reaction.
Right. So it's about cultivating empathy.
Yes.
And trying to understand the root causes of that negative behavior.
Absolutely.
And he offers this really interesting idea that the best way to avenge a wrong is to become a better person yourself.
Right. Rise above.
Yeah.
Be the example.
And he emphasizes the importance of sincerity and honesty.
Yeah. Being genuine.
And acting for the common good.
Yes.
In all our interactions.
Absolutely.
He also encourages us to be tolerant of those who are ignorant.
Yeah.
And to try to guide them towards understanding.
If possible.
Yeah. And this emphasis on the present moment really stands out.
Yes, it's a constant theme.
Yeah.
He reminds himself and us that the present is all we really have.
Right.
So we need to live it fully.
Right.
Guided by our principles.
Right.
Avoid procrastination.
Right.
Find contentment in our current circumstances rather than always chasing after some idealized future.
Right.
It's about being present in your own life.
Yeah. And finally, there's this whole question of fate and acceptance.
Okay, big one.
Yeah, how does Aurelius approach that?
Well, he encourages a sense of trust
Oh,
in the overall order of the universe.
right.
Whether you see it as being guided by some specific providence or just the natural unfolding of events,
Right.
doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Align yourself with reason
Right.
and accept what comes.
Right.
Find ways to learn and grow from challenges
Mm-hmm.
and be grateful for what you have instead of dwelling on what you lack.
Right. Finding strength in acceptance.
Exactly.
So as we kind of come up for air here,
Yeah, surfacing from this deep dive.
there into Marcus Aurelius through Sam Tarod's work,
Right.
what really resonates with you?
I think it's just the enduring relevance of these ideas. You know, here's a Roman emperor from centuries ago
Right.
dealing with the same anxieties and frustrations that we deal with today.
Right. Difficult people, the passage of time.
Yeah, exactly. And what Tarod does is he makes Aurelius's reflections feel so immediate. Like you're having a conversation with him across time.
Yeah.
And it gives us this practical framework for navigating life's complexities.
Right.
You know, focus on your inner state,
Yeah.
your mindset, your actions in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful reminder that our inner world is where our true power lies.
And that lasting peace and mastery don't come from controlling everything around us.
No.
But from understanding and managing our own thoughts.
Yeah.
And how we choose to engage with the world.
Exactly. And it all goes back to that one really important insight.
Right.
Our experience of life isn't dictated by external events, but by how we choose to interpret them and respond to them.
So by cultivating wisdom, practicing self-discipline, and focusing on living virtuously in each moment, we can find a greater sense of inner peace and purpose.
Regardless of our circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and maybe sparked an interest in exploring these ideas further.
Absolutely.
Think about how these ancient principles,
laid out so clearly by Tarod, might offer some guidance in your own life.
Yeah, and the challenges that you face.
Yeah, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We look forward to our next exploration together.
Absolutely.
Goodbye for now.